Hi, my name is Trevor Tuttle, and today I'm going to be discussing contesting the auteur and authorship in film and media. So, getting started, an introduction. What is auteur theory? Auteur theory is the idea that when we look for meaning within a film, oftentimes we look to one person, we look to the director of the film as the sole creator behind the film and the creative direction of it. Um, as Brody writes, it's used sometimes as an honorific to praise directors with a strong artistic mark, and sometimes merely as a description to suggest that directors bear the ultimate responsibility for a movie's quality. So, in a sense, when we look at examining a film and the quality of that film, what it means, any meaning behind it, the person that we look to for that meaning is the director of the film. Now, the issue with that is that auteurism neglects the collaborative nature that is filmmaking by placing all of the meaning of filmmaking in one specific individual. For instance, on a film set, you're going to have gaffers, editors, writers, cinematographers, your studio executives, actors, and all of these people are contributing meaning in some form or another. By using auteurism and specifically focusing on the director, we neglect all of the input that these individuals have put into the film, and specifically focus on one individual. So there are some alternatives that we can use for studying auteurism, so that while we are looking into individuals and what they contribute, we're not limiting it to one individual person, such as the director. So a couple of those examples would be stars as the authors, audience as authors, and studios as authors. Specifically in regards to stars as the authors, this is the idea that the person starring in a film or the people starring in a film contribute meaning in some way, shape, or form to the film overall. When we look at a film, an actor's performance obviously does have some effect on the audience's perception of that character or of the story. And this is just showing that they have an input into what the overall finished film looks like. As Wexman writes, they positioned actors in the eyes of the public as the authors of their films insofar as the intertextual and extratextual discourses that developed around these cultural icons were exploited to create the expectations and govern reading strategies in relation to the films. So, in a sense, what Wexman is saying is she's speaking specifically on earlier cinema when films were first becoming sort of narrative driven and had these storylines attached to them. Many audiences did not go specifically for the director, they went for the actors. It was the directors and producers who started putting the actors' names in the marketing for the film because audiences would see that actor's name, that star, and then they would get that sense that they want to go and watch the film for that actor. Obviously, this has some input into what audiences are expecting, what themes, what they can expect from the actor in terms of their performance. We still see this today with many films. You have a certain style associated with a Tom Cruise film where we're looking for some high stakes action, some practical effects. If you're watching something by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he obviously has some sort of style that we attribute to him starring in films. So it's still something that's highly relevant and shows that actors do have input into the creative direction of the film that they're starring in. The next factor that we're going to look at is the audience as the author. So, this is the idea that the audience watching the film has some sort of say or input into what they are seeing. Obviously, they are going to interpret it the way they want to, but specifically in today's society with social media, this one's becoming even more prevalent. Taylor writes, however, auteur theory does not attend to audience, explain how the expectations of fans and studios can conflict with directorial vision. Taylor was specifically writing about Zack Snyder and the Justice League movie, and some of the reasons why people do not enjoy that movie. And the issue that Taylor has is that a lot of people put that pressure on Zack Snyder, who was the director, which follows along with auteur theory that the director is responsible for the overall creative direction of the film. However, Taylor's arguing that audience expectations also play a part in it. The audience is expecting something of the film, and so it's unfair to put all of the emphasis on the director when the audience is going into this knowing what they want it to look like, with their conceptions of what should or should not happen in the film, who should or should not be in the film. We see this a lot nowadays with social media, where someone's unhappy about something in a film. Maybe it's a certain person starring in the film. Maybe it's sort of the representation on screen, or maybe it's something as simple as like the technology. For instance, with Sonic the Hedgehog, people get upset. They post about it on social media, and oftentimes that ends up causing change in the film or in the production because the studio or the director, they're trying to appease the fans, the audience that are going to watch the film, because in the end that's who it's made for and who's going to end up seeing it. So they do attribute some form of meaning and uh, participate in that creative process with what the audience is bringing to the film or production. The last factor that we're going to look at is the studio as an author. So this looks at taking the studio that's creating the film and suggesting that they have some creative input and say in the direction and meaning of that film. The quote that kind of stood out to me the most was Christensen writing, "If to entertain an impossibility, the Philadelphia story had been made scene by scene, shot by shot, star by star, by Warner's rather than MGM, the film would mean something entirely different from what it does, because the Philadelphia story as we have it is saturated with Metro's corporate intention to justify the ways of Louis B. Mayer." So this is the idea that even if we had the exact same story, the person telling the story is different. The studio submitting the story is different. And because of the values and background of that studio, now it automatically means something different. This is something that we hear about a lot with studios, is sort of their say and input into a film. They're not just putting money into it, but oftentimes we hear from an interview with a director or an actor or even a studio executive themselves who are suggesting, there was this one line of dialogue that didn't make it into the scene because it just didn't align with what we wanted, or there was this one scene that it was too much and we couldn't include it. So the studio definitely has a say in authorship and that creative process behind the film. We look at films like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all of the Marvel movies coming together. Well, all of these films are made by different directors. It's not the same director every time. And there's different actors, stars in every single film. Yet they're all tied together with this sense of continuity and meaning going from one film to the next. And that can really only be accomplished by a studio that's putting together all these different projects. So, even in that sense, a studio is able to have some sort of creative control and help shape the meaning and themes within a large series of films. So, as a conclusion, auteur theory, while it can be helpful, it limits the understanding of a certain film and undermines the collaborative nature of filmmaking. So when we look at a film and we just attribute everything to the director, we overlook the contributions of the gaffer, of the actors, the studio, the cinematographers. All of these people are contributing meaning and some sort of creative input into this film. And when we look at just the director, we kind of forget that those people have a say and input and what they do to change the film. Now, while studying an auteur does reveal information about text, it neglects the input of those other contributors. The issue is that it's not outright wrong to look at an auteur, a director, and say this is what meaning they bring to the table. But at the same time, we need to be able to look at those other factors, those other people, those other groups that are helping create meaning and are responsible for meaning behind the film. For instance, if we look at just one director, well, maybe they have an amazing star. Maybe they have Tom Cruise in their movie, and then maybe they're backed by Paramount. Well, Paramount's going to have some say in what the movie looks like. Tom Cruise is obviously going to have some say in what the film looks like and is going to want it to go a certain direction. So, attributing all of the creative input and everything behind that director when there's just these two groups that have a say and input in what they think this film should look like overlooks that collaborative nature and a lot more important information that would reveal so much more about the text.